Three of the most high-profile claims that many people make about Israel simply aren't true. Let's dig in. Welcome to Sharpening Arrows, where we train teens to think biblically about life and politics. I'm your host, Victor Jakes. We are on YouTube, youtube.com/@sharpeningarrows, youtube.com/@sharpeningarrows. I am recording this while my children are awake and at home. So the possibility of one of them photobombing, not zero. Now, if you are on social media, if you read traditional media, if you hang out with people under 25, I'm guessing that fits almost every teenager in this audience. You are going to hear some claims about Israel that are worth talking about. Now, last episode, I talked about the left's critical theory worldview, but I want to dig in today about some more specific claims that people make about Israel. This is from Politico late last month. In the last 3 years, the share of Republicans under 50 years old who have negative views of Israel jumped from 35% to 50%, and fully 71% of Democrats under 50 have an unfavorable view of Israel. Gabe Goody-Arney, chair of the Ohio College Republican Federation and a senior at the University of Dayton, agreed. Among younger conservatives, he said, quote, "There is a belief that this conflict really is not benefiting the American people, and our involvement in it is not benefiting the American people either," end quote. And many young Democrats feel similarly. Quote, "We've witnessed an allied relationship that isn't largely fair," said Sanjay Muralidharan, president of the College Democrats of America and a political science student at UC San Diego. So there's the kind of, especially among young people, both Democrats and Republicans, certainly stronger on the Democrat side, but many Republicans too, have started to have this kind of aversion to Israel and think that the alliance that the U.S. and Israel have long shared may be doing more harm than good. Let's talk about it. As always, I encourage you to listen to this podcast together as teenagers and parents. Stop the podcast, discuss the questions, and this is, again, parents, this is for you. It's a chance to help you talk about these issues together. So let's have our first pause point. What, if anything, do you think should change about the U.S.'s support of Israel? Now, I just want to say up front, it is okay to question U.S. support for Israel. It's okay to question it, to investigate it, just like there's one of my children, not photobombing, but just waving to me. Just like it's okay to question U.S. support for Ukraine. Those are real policy issues. You should explore it. You should think about the pros and cons. But I would encourage you to come in with a neutral standard and then apply it to the facts of the case. As always on this podcast, I'm going to start with arguments for the side that I personally disagree with. If you want to debate like Charlie Kirk did or ask questions like Ali Stuckey, you simply must understand why people who disagree with you believe what they do. Now, because I'm taking on three different issues for this podcast, I'm just going to talk about one issue and then make the arguments for the side that I personally don't agree with, and then provide responses to those arguments before moving on to a new issue. All right, argument number one: the U.S. supports Israel because of a disproportionate amount of influence that Israel or Jewish people have on the government. You may even hear people say that the government is run by the Jews, and a frequent target of this is AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. This is Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez writing in 2023, AIPAC is, quote, "one of the more racist and bigoted PACs in Congress as well, who disproportionately target members of color. They are an extremist organization that destabilizes U.S. democracy." Wow. Last time I looked, we still had a democracy. All right, I'm sorry. I'm making the arguments for this side. Missouri Representative Cory Bush said, quote, AIPAC's dark money grift and anti-democracy propping up of the insurrectionists are attempts to undermine the will of the people. Now, why would someone believe this? Well, look at the Jerusalem Post from November 2024. At least 318 American Israel Public Affairs Committee backed politicians won their seats in the U.S. elections on Tuesday. AIPAC posted on their X/Twitter. AIPAC is a pro-Israel lobbying group that vowed to spend over $100 million this year in the U.S. elections, according to The Guardian. So you see, it's right there. They raised a lot of money. They gave a lot of money. They control politicians. Of course, the government is backing Israel. All of the hands-picked, supported candidates by AIPAC, 318 of them got elected. And guess what? They're just going to do the bidding of the people who run AIPAC. All right, that's the argument. Obviously, there can be more. You can get into it more in specific situations, but basically that's the argument that AIPAC raises a lot of money, that they support these elected officials, they get them elected with this money, and that gives Israel pro-Jewish, pro-Israel voices a disproportionate influence on the government. All right, so let's have a pause point. Let's ask a question. Do you think AIPAC was the top political donor in 2024? Okay, because this is really important to talk about, because what this argument hinges on is this idea that there's something unique about what AIPAC is doing. If we find that there are lots of groups raising significant amounts of money and distributing it, then it's hard to say that, oh, this one group is the one controlling everything, if there are lots of groups doing the same thing. All right, so that's why we have to go in and we have to actually look at the data. This is from Open Secrets 2024 campaign contributions. The top PAC, that's Political Action Committee, making campaign contributions, was Never Back Down. That was DeSantis's PAC, gave $5 million to Republicans. Next, the National Association of Realtors, about $2 million to Democrats, $2 million to Republicans. Then we get to AIPAC, $1.1 million to Democrats and $1.9 million to Republicans, and it gave about $3 million, and that's right in line with Blue Cross Blue Shield, which gave $1.3 million to Democrats, $1.56 million to Republicans. It's what AIPAC gave wasn't much more than the National Beer Wholesalers Association. It gave $2.8 million, and then there's the American Crystal Sugar PAC, $2.8 billion. $1 million for the National Beer Wholesalers Association too. So what we can see here is that in terms of campaign contributions, AIPAC isn't a wild outlier. Yes, they gave a lot of money. And someone asked me as an individual, is $3 million a lot of money? Yes, $3 million is a lot of money. Is $3 million a lot of money in the grand scheme of every House and Senate race in the country? No, it is not. And in fact, if you think there's a conspiracy involving AIPAC, then you also should think there's a conspiracy involving the National Association of Realtors. What often happens in these situations is that groups find candidates they can support, and they back them. And sometimes these candidates are going to win anyway. This is from the Jerusalem Post article talking about AIPAC backing 318 politicians who won. One recipient, Jewish Democrat Adam Schiff, won his Senate position in California. Okay, newsflash. Adam Schiff was winning that seat in California, whether AIPAC did anything or not. California is heavily Democratic. Once he made it through as one of the top two, he was going to win that seat. And then if we want to dig further, it's not just about campaign spending. There are limits on how much organizations can give directly to a campaign. So we can look at super PAC spending. And there's a lot fewer limits on super PAC spending. So the AIPAC aligned super PAC is called the United Democracy Project. It spent about $38 million last year. Wow, that's a lot of money. to an individual. It's not a lot of money in terms of American political spending. In fact, the United Democracy Project, AIPAC's affiliated super PAC, was only the 14th largest spender last cycle, and it was outspent heftily by some others. And I want to look at the PAC that spent just a little bit more than the United Democracy Project. Remember, that's AIPAC's super PAC, the Fair Shake PAC. Anyone worried about the Fair Shake PAC? Any conspiracy theories out there about the Fair Shake PAC controlling government? It spent $40 million. It raised $260 million. Again, this is according to Open Secrets. The AIPAC super PAC, United Democracy Project, only spent $38 million and only raised $87 million, excuse me. So who is Fair Shake PAC? Are they secretly running the government? Well, this is from factcheck.org. Fair Shake PAC supports candidates committed to securing the United States as the home to innovators building the next generation of the internet. Basically, it supports politicians who back cryptocurrency policy. And so what I'm trying to show here is that you can hear, these large numbers, these millions of dollars, and that's large to an individual in terms of total political spending. It's simply not that much money. Not that much money. Here's another comparison. California billionaire Tom Steyer spent more than $25 million trying to get Arizona to pass a renewable portfolio standard in 2018. So you hear that? This one guy spent $25 million trying to get a policy in one state. That is way more influence, way more advertising on a per capita basis than happened with AIPAC. All right, second response here. Money doesn't guarantee success. Kamala Harris raised $1.5 billion. She spent around $100 million a week and lost. Third response. Providing arms to allies isn't unusual for the United States. Again, this is why it's important to figure out what your neutral standard is and then bring it into a situation. The United States has been providing arms to Ukraine for several years at this point. You may disagree, you may agree, but it's not unusual to do this. In 2016, I had deployed with my National Guard unit to Kuwait, and one of the things the unit was involved in was shipping arms to, I don't know if it was the Iraqi military, what the formal title was, but basically Iraqis that they could use to fight ISIS. And so when the U.S. provides arms to Israel, that's not an unusual foreign policy decision. All right. Argument number two. Actually, let me make the fourth response here about, the supposed, that Israel is controlling the U.S. government. Israel is the United States' best ally in the Middle East. Israel has done much of the work. Trump came in with some bombs at the end, but Israel did much of the work to set back Iran's nuclear program. And that's not just a Middle East problem with long-range ballistic missiles. That could be a United States problem. That was an incredible win for America. And Israel is not asking for U.S. troops, and Israel provides intelligence and technology sharing. Yes, we should support our best ally in the Middle East. That's kind of, in my opinion, an obvious one. All right, here's argument number two. Zohran Mamdani, likely to be the next mayor of New York City, put out this statement on October 7th, the 2-year anniversary of the October 7th massacre. He spends a couple of sentences talking about that and saying he mourned the Jewish lives lost and praying for the safe return of the hostages. And then he says this. In the aftermath of that day, Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli government launched a genocidal war, a death toll that now far exceeds 67,000, with the Israeli military bombing homes, hospitals, and schools into rubble. Every day in Gaza has become a place where grief itself has run out of language. I mourn these lives and pray for the families that have been shattered. Our government has been complicit through it all. Wow. complicit through it all. And then he goes on to say, peace must be pursued through diplomacy, not war crimes. And our government must act to end these atrocities and hold those responsible to account. So this is the argument that Israel has committed genocide, that it has killed 67,000 people in Gaza. It has bombed civilian targets like hospitals, like schools. There are pictures. It's the age of the internet. Everyone can see the videos of these civilian targets being bombed. And this is a disproportionate response. Around 1,200 people died in the October 7th attack, and Israel has killed 67,000 people. As Zoran Mondami says, these are war crimes, and they should be stopped. All right, let's have a pause point here. How many civilians do you think died during the U.S. war in Iraq? I really think this question is important, so I urge you to take a moment and to put a number out there. All right, so let's go through this claim that Israel has committed war crimes. 1. The 67,000 number comes from the Gaza-controlled health ministry. And by Gaza-controlled, I mean Hamas-run. Remember, Hamas is a terrorist group. So we have a terrorist group giving us a casualty count. Take it with a grain of salt. 2, that big number, however accurate it is or isn't, doesn't distinguish between Hamas members and civilians. This is especially important when you hear claims about the number of children who have died. That's not children as in a 5-year-old. The definition of children can include 16 and 17-year-olds who are members of Hamas and actively fighting Israel. This is from Reuters. The Palestinian Health Ministry figures do not differentiate between civilians and Hamas combatants who do not wear formal uniform or carry separate identification. All right, keep that in mind. Israel is trying to take out Hamas because Hamas attacked Israel, killed 1,200 people, kidnapped hundreds more, still is holding hostages, and they are not wearing uniforms. They are trying to blend in with the population. As of January of this year, Israel estimated that 20,000 Hamas fighters had died. It has not provided an updated number since. 3, civilian deaths are tragic, but they are also unavoidable in urban combat when the enemy uses human shields. And it's especially difficult when, as I just mentioned, Hamas doesn't wear a uniform. It is trying to blend in with the civilian population. Now, NBC News in 2023 reported that the number of Iraqi civilians killed in the U.S.-Iraq war was approximately 200,000. And I want you just to ask yourself, was there even a sliver of concern as much as you've been hearing about, oh, Israel's committing war crimes and this genocide? Where were the people saying that with the U.S. and Iraq? I'm sure there were some, but it wasn't this much of a deafening outcry. And the reason is because if you hide soldiers and military units among civilians, there are going to be civilian casualties. That's using a human shield. And now the question comes in, and this is the 4th argument. Who is responsible? Who is morally responsible for a civilian death when someone uses a human shield? Why don't we make that a pause point? Who is morally responsible for a civilian death when someone is using a human shield? Now, I would submit it's the terrorist who uses the human shield. And I don't think that's a particularly difficult thing. If you hide behind civilians, you can't then go out and say, oh, how dare you kill the civilian? If Hamas was not hiding among civilians, it would already be wiped out. It knows this, and so what it's trying to do is put Israel in a catch-22, where in order to kill the terrorists who are trying to kill Israelis, Israel has to bomb in civilian buildings like hospitals and schools, because that's where the rockets and the military members are being put by Hamas. And you have to understand that there are some major cultural differences here. One of the highest priorities in Western civilization is protecting innocent life. It is a tragedy when a child in Gaza dies as a result of Israel's justified military actions. But Hamas doesn't share this ideal. In fact, what Hamas wants is it wants civilian casualties, because it knows that when women and children die during a legitimate military operation, Hamas knows that people like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders will then use those deaths or the possibility of future deaths to demand Israel stop attacking the terrorist group. Sacrificing children to help your military endeavors would be unthinkable in the United States, but Hamas doesn't share Western values. We love death like our enemies love life, a speaker at the funeral of a Palestinian terrorist said in 2023. If you want to save the lives of children in Gaza, you have to condemn Hamas for putting them in harm's way. You have to go after Hamas harder for using civilian human shields. Hamas will only stop using children and women as human shields when it becomes a PR and strategic liability instead of an asset. All right, let me tell you about Mama Bear Prayers, a podcast for moms who are knee-deep in dishes and training their teens. Whether you are in the carpool lane or the coffee line, host Charity Rios wants to come alongside you and help you grow deeper in your relationship with Jesus. Now, as every parent knows, raising kids can feel a bit like a ping pong game. You bounce from moments of joy to moments of deepest concern. Combine that with the busyness of life, the back and forth can leave any mom feeling overwhelmed and even isolated. As the mom of 4 busy boys, Charity knows this firsthand, and it's why she created Mama Bear Prayers, to come alongside you and support you as you raise kids. God works through prayer, so check out Mama Bear Prayers today. All right, Zoran Mondami made one other claim in his statement. The occupation and apartheid must end. You will hear this on a fairly frequent basis if you're involved in this debate. The idea that Israel is an apartheid state, that Israel is. So let's ask. Let's make the argument that Israel is an apartheid state. Question 5. What do you mean by that? That's question 5 of the grade 8. Apartheid, a policy or practice of separating or segregating groups. Now, Israel is an explicitly Jewish state. This is from the Israel Forever Foundation. A Jewish state is a state whose history is bound up with the history of the Jewish people, whose principal language is Hebrew and whose main holidays reflect its national mission. A Jewish state is a state that fosters Jewish culture, Jewish education, and the love of the Jewish people. A Jewish state is a state whose values are drawn from its religious tradition. Well, that makes it obvious. Of course, it's an apartheid state. It's an explicitly Jewish state. All right, let's have a pause point. What would you say in response to that argument? All right, let's dig into it. First thing I would do is I would ask someone who made that argument, well, do you apply that to the countries around Israel that are explicitly Islamic? Do you accuse those countries of apartheid? Or is this a standard that you are only wanting to apply to the one Jewish country in the entire world? Second response. If you actually go into Israel, you'll find that 21% of Israeli residents are Arabs, and they have the same legal rights as Jewish citizens. That's not what happens in an apartheid state. And in fact, the real apartheid state was in the Gaza Strip before 2023. This is from PBS. In 2005, then Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon led a unilateral withdrawal from Gaza, uprooting all of Israel's troops and roughly 9,000 settlers in a move that bitterly divided Israel. Okay, so do you understand what's happening here? Israel gave control of the Gaza Strip to the Palestinians living there, and then it forcibly removed Jews from the Gaza Strip. Why did they have to leave? Why couldn't the Jews just stay there? because the residents of the Gaza Strip would have murdered them. That's what would have happened. We saw evidence of that on October 7th. The people who live, not all of the people, of course, but the vast majority of people, the people who elected Hamas to run their government, the people who live in the Gaza Strip are so radical that Egypt doesn't let them in. It wants to keep them out. And you'll notice that there's never an accusation that, oh, Egypt is an apartheid state for doing the exact same thing that the Israeli government does. All right, final pause point here. Imagine Hamas had the military might of Israel. How many Jews would be left alive in Israel? And I think this question really clarifies what's happening here. Israel has the ability to wipe out and kill every single person in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip. Instead, it is engaged in an unprecedented effort to warn civilians about when Israel is going to bomb and urge them to leave when it attempts to go in and wipe out Hamas. But if the roles were reversed, if Hamas was that strong militarily, every Jew in the region would be dead. Israel would no longer exist. Those are the stakes. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It's right down there. Just open the podcast app and click it. And if you've liked it, if you think it's of value, I encourage you to share it with a friend. Be courageous like Charlie, stay sharp, and give God the glory. I'll see you next time.